Today, let's talk about why triggers stick. It's not just about the moment that you're in, it's about the moments that come before it. Now, here's the truth. Triggers are rarely isolated incidents. They're rooted in layers of experiences, personal, global, and environment specific. And unless you take time to untangle where they come from, they will keep showing up, often when you least expect them. Now, let's just break it down real quick. First, there are your personal triggers. These come from our lived experiences, our upbringing, relationships, and the moments that shaped us. They're tied to the stories that we carry about ourselves and the narratives that we build about other people. For example, if you were raised in an environment where criticism was harsh and constant, you may find yourself overreacting when receiving feedback, even when it's constructive. The conversation you think you need to have with your boss about how they made you feel might actually be the conversation you need to have with your parents and even yourself about how those early patterns shaped your reactions. Next, let's talk about these global triggers. Now, global triggers are the learned experiences that we get from our culture, society, and media. They stem from stereotypes, biases, systemic influences that shape how we see the world and ourselves in it. Imagine how society's narrative about success or failure might create a deep sense of inadequacy or fear of being judged. And don't even get me on concepts around race and gender. When these global triggers show up, they reinforce unconscious behaviors like perfectionism and people pleasing. They aren't just habits, they're protective mechanisms because we build them over time because they shield us from the discomfort of not aligning with societal expectations. Now, finally, there are these workplace or environment specific triggers. These are shaped by the dynamics of our current context, like a high pressure job, a team culture, or even a layout of a workspace. For example, feeling dismissed in a meeting might not be just about the moment. It could be about amplifying a personal trigger that's tied to a past experience of being ignored or undervalued. And without understanding the root cause, that workplace trigger can escalate into patterns of conflict, burnout, and even disengagement. That's the real challenge. Most of us focus only on the moment when a trigger happens, and we react to that immediate situation without tying it back to its origin story. We think this conversation with my colleague is the issue, when really the issue is the deeper narrative that has been reinforced over years. Now, here's where psychology plays a role. Triggers thrive on confirmation bias, the unconscious tendency to seek out evidence that reinforces what we already believe about life. If you believe that you're undervalued, your brain will latch onto every moment that seems to confirm that belief, whether it's true or not. Over time, this creates unconscious behaviors like avoidance, defensiveness, and overcompensation, none of which serve you or help you resolve the real issue. So how do we address this? The first step is to identify the type of trigger you're dealing with. Is it personal? Something rooted in your past experiences or relationships? Is it global? A belief or system that has been shaped by the culture or the society? Is it environmental? A pattern tied to your current workplace or context? Once you identify the origin, you can start addressing the real story, not just the immediate reaction or the story you've been telling yourself. Okay? For many of us, the conversation we think we need to have, again, with that boss or colleague, is often a conversation that we need to have with ourselves, our upbringing, our beliefs inherited from society, and other people that have influenced and shaped our lives. Triggers stick because they are tied indefinitely sometimes to unresolved truths. They're your brain's way of flagging where healing, alignment, and rethinking is needed. The question isn't just whether you're triggered, it's whether you're willing to go deep enough to understand why. Now, in the next part of the series, we will explore how to start transforming these triggers into tools for growth. But for now, I'll leave you with this. What's one recurring trigger that you've experienced? If you trace it back, where does it really come from? The truth is always in the trigger and is worth exploring.